Paranormal in Pennsylvania may discuss topics such as suicide, murder, and other potentially upsetting things. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to Paranormal in Pennsylvania,
where we discuss history and hauntings.
Today's story takes us over to Philadelphia. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Erica.
Let's get into it. For a second, I had to look up and see which one we were covering. So the Academy of Music. The Academy of Music is located in Philadelphia, and I grew up about 45 minutes away from it and used to go there all the time. Have you ever been?
I haven't.
Okay.
There are a lot of places on the east coast of Pennsylvania that I have not been. I don't know what I was doing, but...
Well, you know, Philly, but you had a good music scene in Bethlehem.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, we had Music Fest. I feel like I've mentioned that once before.
Yeah.
It was a fun festival.
I used to love getting dressed up and going into the city. It was like a big deal to go see shows and stuff.
Yes.
So I love the Academy of Music, and I was so surprised to hear that it was haunted.
Yeah.
So it's located at 240 South Broad Street in Philly, and it first opened in 1857. It's the oldest operating opera house in the United States. I know.
Honestly, so here's the thing. It's like, I was like, oh my gosh, like that's so crazy. It's in PA, but like it's in Philly.
I know.
So I guess that does make sense.
I think that a lot. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the oldest residential street, like when we covered Alfred Alley, and then I'm like, oh yeah, Philadelphia was the capital.
Right.
Like literally where they wrote the Constitution. Cool.
Yeah.
So it houses the Philadelphia Orchestra, which has been there since 1900, the year 1900.
Right.
And left in 2001. It was designated a National Historical Landmark in 1962, which is 105 years after it opened.
Yeah, that's interesting to me. I don't know why, but like 1962 seems like such an early year to declare something like a historical landmark, even though it's like 1960s, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it feels like really early to me. But I guess that makes sense.
Well, I wonder how you like qualify for it. Is it that you've been around for over 100 years maybe, and then you have to apply and be voted on? Do they pick the places?
I don't know. I know that like, okay, this is a trope, I think, in some like TV shows or like movies where a building is possibly being like demolished or like and then they make it a historical landmark. I don't know how accurate that is.
It could be. Who knows?
Yeah.
In the 60s, I have no clue if they were renovating Philly, but I'll buy it. So during its time, it's shown everything from Broadway shows to ballets to symphonies. So they do everything there.
Gotcha.
And it's actually part of a bigger complex of performing arts buildings in the city. So there's like the Kimmel Center, etc. That's the only one I remember.
That's one more than I know.
Yeah.
Or that I knew.
But it is really cool, the history here, because again, it's been around since 1857. So allegedly, this is where Grant was nominated for his second term in 1872.
Oh.
So that's 17 years after it opened, and that would make sense. Again, you know, capital, north. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And Grover Cleveland held a celebration here in 1886 after his marriage, and Nixon visited for an orchestra show in 1970, and Frank Sinatra once played there.
I love Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
I love him. That's a lot of people. Okay, again, like, yeah, that makes sense. But that is a lot of people that had stuff going on there.
And a lot of huge names. Like,
yes.
The fact that Grant was nominated for his second term there. And, I mean, Grover Cleveland, that's cool. Nixon, obviously a huge name. And then Frank Sinatra playing anywhere makes it legendary in my mind.
I agreed.
It's just so cool.
Yeah.
So, with all of this time and history, it is bound to be incredibly haunted. So, we'll start off with the upper balconies, because that's where most of the hauntings tend to happen. So, like any orchestra, there's the main floor and like pit area, and then upper balconies as well.
Yes.
So there's a man in black that is said to haunt the area behind the last row of seats. So he's not necessarily seated, but like standing behind.
Yeah.
And people see him when the lights are down, but when the lights go up for intermission or after the show, he disappears.
That's interesting. I know, you know, it's funny because we've talked about with Twice the Terror, I think, like Ladies in
Ladies in White. That
Ladies
was on
in Black.
their podcast. Yeah.
Yes, which is really cool. But I don't think I've ever heard of a man in black. Like, I know we've talked about people in tuxedos or like suits, but I don't think we've ever like had somebody named a man in black.
And it makes me wonder, is he a old manager or an old patron or the old owner? I don't know if anybody actually ever independently owned it, but you know, if he has some significance, because it seems like, contrary to a lot of ghosts that we hear of in theaters that want the spotlight, he really doesn't. He doesn't even want to be seen, you know?
True, yeah.
And some people do debate whether or not he's actually there, saying it could be a worker standing in the back row. But I think the fact that you could literally be looking at him while the show is going on, and then the lights would come up and he would just disappear, that is not a human.
Not a human I would like to interact with, if we're being honest.
Or we do, because we want to know how you teleport.
That's true. I would like to know how to teleport.
Yeah.
That'd be fantastic.
So that's one of the spirits there. But there's another thing in the upper balconies that was really interesting, and it's specific to female visitors.
Okay.
So when a female sits next to an open seat, there is allegedly a spirit that sits next to her and then proceeds to antagonize her.
Oh.
So first it starts with hearing the seat creaking, like someone's sitting down, even though no one is. And like feeling the presence of someone next to you. And then people report feeling their hair pulled, or, you know, even being pinched by the person sitting next to them, which is interesting to me, because to me that is someone wanting to pull attention versus the shadow in the back, because some people said that it's the same person, but the person that's in the back doesn't want attention, and this person is directly deviating attention from the show.
Yeah, those personalities are very different. I would also be surprised if it were actually the same person. But yeah, I guess that's like, you know, hair pulling we've seen before, even pinching like we've seen before. But I think what makes this one so unique to me is just the fact that like a show is going on.
Right. And there's no one in the seat next to you. Like, imagine if you were sitting in like one seat with two empty seats next to you and you feel someone pinch you. It's like,
Excuse me? Listen, I go to the movies alone all the time. So I'm going to be thinking about this the next time I go.
Up next is AMC Theaters Haunted. No. So it's funny you say that about hair pulling, because people report their hair being pulled actually while walking to their seats, which is really interesting.
Oh.
And that if they're not paying attention to the show, they may have their hair pulled or be pinched, regardless if the seat's empty. So again, it seems like there's a variety of spirits here, because that's pulling attention back to the show rather than pulling attention from the show.
I was going to say, that's a moral ghost right there for the actors.
Yeah, like, pay attention.
Yes.
If you don't want to see a show, don't go to the theater.
I mean, yeah, that's
if you're not going to pay attention, don't go to the theater.
Oh my gosh. Okay, wait, I gotta deviate for a second. So Zach and I went to this Pink Floyd symphony.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're like sitting there, and you know how like you're not supposed to record anything and you're not supposed to use flash photography? Yeah. This older woman next to us was recording with her flash on.
Oh my gosh, no.
And all of a sudden, like, I'm watching the show and I'm like, this is so great. And then I just see like, boop, like this huge light. And I was like, I don't think this woman knows what she's doing. So no one said anything to her. Everybody around, we just let her go.
How long was it though? Was it like...
It was like 30 seconds the first time. And then the second time was the entire portion of the song they wrote about the homeless crisis, which I do not remember.
Oh, no.
But that's a long song. I mean, that's a long one.
They probably didn't know their flashlight was on, or maybe they really thought it was making a difference, even though it indeed was not.
No, in fact, I'm pretty sure that makes it worse from where we were sitting. We are not rich people, okay? We were like all the way back, so...
She's like, notice me. No, it's probably just an innocent mistake. Yeah. That's funny. That is funny. And that, I'm just thinking of how interesting it would be if a spirit did that. Like, you just see a lit phone lit up. And like, what would this person do to that woman? Like,
yeah,
push her over?
Hopefully not.
Yeah, it feels aggressive.
Yes.
It does. So, other than the specific haunting, or the non-specific hauntings, because these are just like seem to be individual spirits based on personality, but
Right.
we don't know who exactly they are. There are two that people believe they know who they are. So the first is the spirit of a young opera singer named Mary O'Neill, and she is said to haunt the theater. She is said to have died on stage during a performance, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
And so the spirit still roams the halls and will appear to guests in the audience. So you don't see her on stage where she died. You see
Right.
her in the audience.
Which is interesting. I mean, that's interesting by itself.
Yeah.
I also, the first thing that came to my mind was like, I wonder if the audience thought that it was part of the play. You know what I'm saying? For like
Oh,
a few
yeah.
seconds, like not realizing that something had actually happened.
Yeah, like Moulin Rouge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Imagine how startling that would be.
Yes. One time, oh my gosh.
You're fine. Go ahead.
Stories. Oh
So
my
many
gosh.
theater experiences.
I know. I was watching this one play and someone fell off the stage.
Stop. Here,
They were
like,
okay. No, this
my
was
gosh.
like back in Bethlehem. I was still in high school watching a high school play. And they
No, it was amateur theater. That makes it worse. I thought it was like someone accidentally fell off the stage at like the Bethlehem Theater.
No.
Not like it was my high school play.
She was a trooper.
Oh,
She
no.
fell off the stage and then kept singing and ran back on. I was like,
I hope she's on Broadway.
that's what I'm saying
Yeah.
because she was great.
Dedication. Oh my gosh. Wow. So, the other spirit is a former theater manager who died in his private
Oh.
box. And the rumor is that he still haunts the theater, appearing in that box. And he appears when performances start. So he seems to actively be watching it.
Oh.
And in my head, like, being like, is everything going okay? You know?
Yeah.
So that one's sweet.
And that's a nice way to spend the afterlife, honestly, because you're just going to be watching new shows all the time.
Right.
Which is cool.
And, you know, if you really loved your job, then
Yeah.
yes. And that sounds like a good job. Like, I feel like people at theaters are like families.
Yes.
And so that's all of the haunts. And what's interesting to me is in the back of my mind, I had the Fulton Theater because it's the only other theater that we've covered. And there, the spirits were actively interrupting the shows or trying to steal attention. But here, even Mary only shows up in the audience. So it's much more respectful.
Yeah. Yeah, well, because I remember someone was backstage
Yeah.
in the Fulton Theater.
Yeah. The guy that was like snapping or
Yes.
whistling or whatever. Yeah.
And that one also had the director who would like shout at the actors, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, that's really disturbing, the piece.
Yeah.
So it's nice.
Yeah, I just think it's so much more peaceful and sweet and maybe even playful. I mean, it didn't say what this was before it became the building, but I'm sure it does have a history before
Yeah.
1857 because it almost sounds like children spirits to me, like pulling the hair when people are walking to their seats and
Yes.
stuff. So it's really interesting. I would personally love to go back for a show, for a paranormal investigation. It's a beautiful theater. It's just a beautiful building because it's so old. And I would love to sit specifically not next to anyone. Like,
Oh, yeah.
we should go and we should do like David seat, Sarah seat, Erica seat, Z.
Yes. That's a good idea.
And then we can guarantee, but then we have to sit way up in the top balcony seats, which is
Oh,
probably
yeah.
more on par for our PIP investigation budgets.
Yes.
And
True.
then we can be annoying people with like EMF readers sitting there. Like, I was going to say swabbing the seats. But you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
checking the seats.
Yes.
Definitely. That would be really cool.
It would be.
So, if you are in Philadelphia, or even if you're not, let us know if you've ever been to the Academy of Music, if you've had a paranormal experience there. We would love to go back and tune in next Thursday to see what hauntings we discuss next.